Welcome to Dollars and Data. Today we'll take a behind-the-scenes look at Project Aristotle. Project Aristotle was the subject of a New York Times Magazine article in February of 2016, Google's attempt to identify what comprised their most successful teams. Now first things first, we'll take a look at the links themselves to both the article as well as the underlying research that eventually provided an aha moment for Google. These links can be found within the description of this video on YouTube. The article itself pointed to a 1999 piece of research from Harvard's Amy Edmondson. In fact, we'll be taking a look at a bit more comprehensive 40-page paper that she did in 2002. The overview to the problem and the opportunities was this. The opportunities were to go ahead and pull data points from 180 teams across Google. That's a chance that few of us will have. The challenge was, once done and once analyzed, there really was no clear pattern involved. Some groups had characteristics that were this, some groups had characteristics that were very, very different in nature. It was hard to see the common denominators. Eventually they found, by pulling out some existing research, such as Miss Edmondson's, that psychological safety was the key to success. Now here's the definition of psychological safety. I'll let you read that yourself. But suffice it to say, I think it represents the opportunity for team members to feel like they have a safety net to fall back on. You can't call it trust because the research would distinguish between psychological safety and trust. But there is a form of trust in that if somebody raises their hands to voice an opinion or take further risk as part of a project, that they will not be embarrassed or rejected or punished as a result. I think this brings up some larger questions too. How to define success? I'll leave everybody to ponder that, and frankly I think that the answer can be found too, simply through the goals for a particular project. If those goals are being met, one could argue that's success, but there's always a chance too to go ahead and have stretch goals that are implied. It's one thing to go ahead and do something within an allotted time frame, for example. It's another thing to do it well. And then how should recommendations be implemented? This was a criticism of the article, but we're going to get to that in the next slide. And then finally, I think a great question that's quickly answered is, what does it mean to be data-driven in the 21st century? It's so easy to go ahead and think of the answers in terms of financial metrics or perhaps market share and the like, but something as soft as team norms, when that turns out to be data-driven, I think that's a great example, yet another example of companies being data-driven. Now let's take a closer look at implementation. The implementation of not just psychological safety, but also too the entire team learning process that is a crucial part of success is shown here in the bottom right. This diagram comes from Miss Edmondson's research, and suffice it to say, it really begins with the team leaders. The team leaders promote goals which are made very clear to the team members. I think that constitutes a set of boundaries too, in which people can begin to define success, of course, and constraints. So the goals are very critical, and then comes psychological safety. The team leader needs to go ahead and enforce that team atmosphere, the team norms, the team culture that allows people to be comfortable in expressing their opinions again, or it could be, in the case of IT, perhaps allocating time, precious time, to a proof of concept that may not pay off. And then finally, the team leader puts together the team learning processes at an opportune time or times in the project. A chance for team members to go ahead and reflect, to have discussions with each other, and then pull together action items that they can act upon. A little more here on the team learning process. One great spot in a project to go ahead and perform the reflection mentioned in the research is at the midpoint of the project, and that makes a lot of sense. But it deserves to be pointed out anyway based on the research done. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's not enough to go ahead and have these points in time in which we communicate just being Scrum meetings in the morning. Google, I'm sure, is as good with Agile and Scrum meetings as anybody else, but if that were the end-all be-all, there would be no reason for Project Aristotle. And then the very last bullet is one that I appreciate. I don't want to go ahead and ding corporate cultures necessarily, but being around for a while, I have noticed what's stated there. And then take a look at the research. The research will go ahead and point out that In order to not take things lightly, not be complacent, to take it one step further, preparing for a project, it's also important to go through dry runs. Many of their examples, by the way, in the research dealt with healthcare environments, so that might be of particular interest to those within the healthcare industry. So that's it. Just wanted to briefly touch on that and provide some food for thought. Thank you for visiting Dollars and Data.